Nothing.
I heard you say something.
Oh, no, not me. Daddy?
Yes, I will say something. Hello and welcome to a dangerous edition of the Headless Hammerhead Guide to Comics and More. Today is the first of a series of videos where we will evaluate all of the power sets one at a time and each power within. So today we're going to take a look at the weather control power set. Here in Florida we know about the weather, so I think I have some authority on this. And when we want to show people which way the wind is blowing, we make sure to use all the arrows. And that's exactly what I'm going to do in this video. So let's get to it. Weather control is the smallest power set out of all the power sets in the core rulebook for Marvel Multiverse role-playing game. This really has 5 powers. Control weather actually has 4 subsets, but really between control fog, control weather, thunder, weather chill, and weather warm, you've only got really 5 core powers within this set. They are all first rank powers, which makes it very convenient if you a character with a consistent theme. You can have all the powers in one shot at rank 1. If you want to have a character like Storm, for example. So I'm going to break down how each one of these powers works practically and thematically, both in combat and outside of combat, and then I'll give my opinion on whether it's worth the cost of a power that you could trade for a different power. And let's get to it. Control fog. Alright, here we go. The character can create or dispel a thick fog. The power set, of course, these are all weather control. Prerequisites, none. The type of action that it takes is a standard action in combat. The duration is as long as you keep concentration, you can keep it going. And then what is the effect? The effect is the character creates a thick fog for up to 50 spaces per rank around them that blocks all line of sight beyond 10 spaces. They can also dispel any fog in a similar area. So taking a look at this, it's rank 1 and it has no focus cost, which is great. It means you can do it as much as you want and it really won't cost your character anything. And the thick fog goes up to 50 spaces per rank. So at rank 1, 50 spaces in all directions around you. That is a very large space that this covers. So practically, outside of combat, this is great if you're trying to sneak into a building, you're going to raid a boat or an airplane or whatever. This is a great way to do it, especially in the higher ranks. I mean, this can go real far and cover a huge area. So how is it in battle? Well, a thick fog that covers 50 spaces per rank in all directions around the character is huge. You'll cover the entire battlefield of pretty much any battle. Now, consider this will affect your allies as well, not just the bad guys. So in a way, you have to be very careful using this type of power because you could be hindering your own teammates and worse off than what you would be hindering the opponents, the bad guys. The other thing here though, is that it says it blocks all line of sight beyond 10 spaces. If you look at a board, 10 spaces is quite a bit. So really, you're not blocking much of line of sight. So as far as combat is concerned, you're really only protecting yourself from ranged attackers who are more than 10 spaces away. When you compare that to the Mists of Munipur, which is under the magic power set, and yes, it is a rank 2 power, and yes, it does have a cost of 5 focus, but when you look at it, it has twice the range, so up to 100 spaces per rank around them, blocks all line of sight beyond 10 spaces, the same thing as control fog, but it also keeps people or creatures inside it from flying, gliding, or web slinging, which is huge. That is a very, very big difference versus control fog. So as practical use outside of combat, this is a very good power because it's got a huge range and it can really help you pretty much every adventure you're going to be needing to sneak around. So having a fog around you and it doesn't block all of your line of sight, It leaves you 10 spaces where you can see you and your allies, which is pretty good to sneak around and break, find your way into a building or into a structure or a camp or whatever without detection and not really hinder your allies much, which is pretty good. But in combat, it's no good. Control weather is a multi-tiered power, and just like all the other multi-tiered powers, all the tiers are similar to the prior tier, just slight improvement as you move up the ranks. So control weather 1, 2, 3, and 4, we'll look at all of them together here. So control weather 1 is the only power on the weather control power set that actually has a rank requirement, and it begins with rank 2. It does take a standard action to use, and of course concentration to upkeep. The effect, it starts to rain in an area up to 5 miles across times the character's rank, centered on the character. All ranges are cut in half, movement is not affected. This has a huge range, 5 miles across per rank. So in the higher ranks you've got, oh man, so many miles that you can go. But it's all centered on the character, so it goes in all directions, and all ranges are cut in half. So we need to really consider here, you're looking at line of sight, ranges for firing weapons and powers and things like that, and of course movement is not affected. So really it's used for blocking long range attacks or any kind of long range visual aid, like if somebody's using a telescope or something. So this has really no practical use in combat whatsoever, because it doesn't even affect movement. Control weather 2 moves it up a notch. Now this one does require control weather 1, of course, as a prerequisite, and a rank 3, a standard action and concentration upkeep. This has a 10 focus point cost. And what is the change between control weather 2 and control weather 1 is this one starts a storm in an area up to 5 miles across, same as the first one, per character's rank, centered on the character. All ranges and all speeds are cut in half. So now you have a rank 3 power that basically cuts all speeds in half. That includes swim speed, fly speed, climb speed, leap speed, jump speed. All of those speeds are cut in half, as well as the ranges. As we move up to control weather 3, it of course has control weather 2 as a prerequisite, which also has control weather 1, and it's a rank 4 power. Action is standard, duration concentration, 15 focus this time. So the first paragraph is exactly the same as control weather 2, where it's up to 5 miles per character rank, centered on the character, and all ranges and all speeds are cut in half. So it's exactly the same. The only difference is the second paragraph, where it says that if the character also has the elemental blast electricity power, they can use it as a reaction when attacked while this power is active. So this is a very tight restriction. The power has to be active. You're actively concentrating during combat on a power that doesn't really have much practicality in combat to begin with, and you have to have this other power. It is pretty good that it makes it a reaction basically for you to be able to strike whoever's striking you, but they have to be striking you. It can't be just them striking somebody else in your team. They have to specifically target you. So for a rank 4 power, I don't know if this is really all that good. Even in combat, I mean, it's very specific. You can't just blast someone with electricity through the power. You need to have the other power. So there's really not much use to it. Then we go to control weather 4, where again, control weather 3 is a prerequisite, which means you need 2 and 1. You need to be rank 5. Takes a standard action, concentration upkeep. Cost is 20 focus points. And here we go with the first paragraph. 5 miles per rank, centered on the character. All ranges and all speeds are now cut to 1/4 of the normal, and flying is impossible. It doesn't say leaping, so if somebody has a super leap power, that doesn't get affected, but flying does. I, as a DM, would probably do a house rule where it affects leaping as well. So you actually have to turn the page to see the second paragraph of this power. And at the top of the next page, it says if the character also has the elemental barrage electricity power, they can use it as a reaction when attacked while this power is active. So basically, Weather Control 4 is completely reliant on elemental barrage to be of any use in combat. Yeah, it cuts down the movement to a quarter of what it is, but it also affects your allies. You have to consider that. That can really, really hinder your group. It can turn the tide against you if not used properly, if you use it carelessly. And you need to rely on having elemental barrage as well. So just like Weather Control 3, Weather Control 4 is basically a supplemental power for the elemental barrage and elemental blast, respectively. By themselves, Weather Control 3 and 4 are useless. Even in a practical use outside of combat, you're basically going to do well enough with Weather Control 1. Add to that the fact that first you need to specify the elemental barrage has to be lightning. It cannot be anything else. It can't be ice or water. But also it's limited to your line of sight. And the Weather Control 4 on its own affects your line of sight. It cuts it down to 1/4 of what it should be.
They probably are also ready to bust out of there. So that's good, Phil. Thank you for telling us.
You're welcome.
Later tonight, we can maybe start seeing an improvement.
No, we definitely won't see an improvement tonight. But if you do want to give your trees a comb over, the Weather Control 3 and 4 are definitely for you.
Just chill.
Alright, Weather Chill and Weather Warm, I'm going to talk about them at the same time because although they are two separate powers, they are pretty much opposites of each other. They're similar in that way. So they have no prerequisites, standard action, duration is concentration, and the effect, very simply stated in one line. For Weather Chill, the temperature in an area roughly a mile across falls as low as 0 degrees Fahrenheit. For Weather Warm, the temperature in an area roughly a mile across climbs as high as 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So neither of these really has much of a combat application unless, again, as a support during combat, where if during combat, like many superhero fights, especially team fights, you're not just fighting the bad guy altogether. There's always something else going on during the combat, right? So there may be a fire, there may be smoke, there may be somebody got snowed in, there's an avalanche of some sort. So these powers are support to help those instances, to keep the distractions at bay while the real heavy hitters take care of the big bad. These also help, of course, to prevent disasters outside of combat during just regular gameplay, role-playing. They can really help with that. They can help with if you're in a death trap set by a big villain. They put you in some kind of death trap, whether it's, you know, sinking down, where they're going to sink you down into a pool of sharks or whatever with lasers on their heads. You can boil the water, or you can freeze the water by dropping the temperatures, things like that. So it's got applications outside of combat, but again, in combat, only as support to prevent distractions for your heavy hitters.
And especially across the eastern and northeast part where the squalls are moving through.
And the final power is Thunder. So the prerequisites, none, which is great. It's a rank 1 power, standard action to use, instant duration. The character makes an ego check and compares that against the resilience defense of every character within 10 spaces. Any character the attack succeeds against is deafened. On a fantastic success, the character is also stunned for 1 round. So this does have combat applications, but like with all the other powers in the Weather Control power subset, you have to be very careful when and how you use it because it can affect your allies. You can't select your targets. And this also causes deafness to people who fail their role. So that could lead to one of your allies losing concentration on one of their powers. But it doesn't deal damage though, so again, this is more like a debuff against a group of enemies if you have enemies within 10 spaces of you and no allies near you. So again, it's kind of a specialized use and doesn't really have a lot of other uses. So should you stay or should you go? Well, both the lights are on here, so there's good and bad things about it. It depends on several factors. First, what type of campaign is your narrator running, right? Keep in mind, this is not designed to be like Dungeons and Dragons at all. This is very different. This is more roleplay heavy. This is more theme heavy. This is more about the story. Also, combat is a little bit different too, because again, during combats, you're gonna have other things happening other than just people attacking you. There's always somebody in danger, a civilian in danger, there's a pedestrian, whatever. There's a kid where the car is gonna fall on top of them or whatever. All of that, there's a fire that's inching closer to a big gas tank, that can create an explosion that'll blow up the whole city, all while you're fighting the villain. So that's the type of battles that you should be seeing in a comic book themed role-playing game. So this type of power set will work for that in a very good way. But again, if you want a combat heavy person who's a heavy hitter, this is not the power set to use, because the only powers that deal damage directly here are actually none. They're all support powers. The weather control 3 and 4 will allow you to do a reaction attack, but only if you're attacked personally and only if you have those other powers, which are all high rank powers as well, have a lot of prerequisites, and they cost focus points. And so does weather control 3 and 4. So you're spending a lot of focus on something that really you don't need to be doing. You're good with just taking weather control 1 to take care of whatever it is that's distracting your heavy hitters during combat, and forget 3 and 4, to be honest. If you want to hit, take another power like the elemental blast, elemental barrage, whatever, so that you can deal damage directly with just that. Control fog has its applications as well. One of the good things I didn't mention earlier is that it can be used to reduce fog. So if there's a fire, you can reduce the smoke, which is usually what harms people, is smoke inhalation. And then you've got thunder, and that also has a very specialized use if you're surrounded within 10 spaces by other characters who have concentration on their powers, and you need to disrupt that. But again, this will also affect your allies because you can't choose your targets, so it's very specialized as well. And thus ends another edition of the Headless Hammerhead Guide to Comics and More. Thank you so much for watching, and of course for hitting the like, subscribing, leaving a comment, and hitting that notification bell. It helps a lot. You guys have sent me a lot of feedback. I very much appreciate it. Feedback on the stuff I've created, like the narrator screen and the random character generation tables. I have updated versions. There were a couple of errors on both of those, so I've updated them. There's a 2.0 version available for download. If you want to go back and download the updated ones, you can do so on my website, where you can hang out and check out some comic books and other goodies from pop culture as well. DangerousWatersComics.com. That's Dangerous Waters with an S, Comics with an S.com. And there you can also find all the things for the Marvel Multiverse role-playing game. You'll find dice, you'll find all the books, you can find the pre-orders as well, and an ultimate pack that includes dice, all the books as well, and some extras. And you'll be able to get a huge discount on that. In addition, you'll get free shipping if you use code FREESHIP at checkout. And send me an email if you have any questions. I try to respond very quickly, within minutes, and I very much appreciate your time. And always remember,
we don't bite here.